This demonstration is designed to show how SQL Server can be used as a source of CDC changes to Fabric using a Fabric Delta stream. It will also show how schema changes at source, e.g. adding and removing columns from a table, will require no changes to Fabric or the Delta stream. The demo will also show how adding a table and adding CDC to it will automatically be picked up by the Delta stream. So without further ado, let's crack on. So here is Microsoft Code, which has lots of SQL commands in this notebook, which is going to go to my Azure SQL database in this instance. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tidy things up a little bit. So let's just run that. Might take a while. Okay, so let's tidy things up on the database. So the next thing we're going to do, step 2, is to enable CDC on the database. Let's do that. Next, we are going to create a very simple table called dbo.table_country with just a primary key and the name of the country, which is just an nvarchar 256. So let's create that on the database. Done. Step 4, let's add CDC tracking to this table. Now we're also going to give it rather than going for the default instance name, we're going to actually explicitly give it an instance name so we can keep track on the versions, which is quite important. So we do that. And that's done. Step 5, let's create a record in our country table for Japan. Okay, so just to recap, we've got a country table in our database called dbo.table_country with a single row in it. So let's go and set up Fabric and the Delta stream. So switch to Fabric. So here we are in Fabric. The first thing we're going to do is create a workspace. And let's call it demo workspace. Go down to the trial. There we go. Apply. And there's our demo workspace. Next thing we're going to do is create an event stream. So new item, event stream. Let's call it demo event stream, like that. Stream event. Create. Okay, so we've got an event stream sitting in our workspace. So the next thing we're going to do is connect to this data source. The data source being the SQL database that we looked at a few minutes ago. So connect, SQL, Azure SQL DB, connect. I think I've already got a connection. Let's just double check that. Yeah, that one there. I'm going to say all tables in that database for consideration. Now, this is quite an important distinction here. So this is the option that we need to check to make it pick up our changes that we make at source. So I'm not going to go off the default here. I am instead going to go for analytics, read events, and auto update schema. So let's choose that one. Let's create. I'm going to give it effectively a schema name in the workspace. So let's call it demo schema, like that. Let's click next. And let's try and connect. Okay, so this is our workflow, or the Delta stream source, the event stream itself. I'm not going to set up a destination in this demonstration, but we could. So we could have a source SQL CDC changes flowing to a data warehouse or a lakehouse or something, but I'm not covering that in this particular video. So let's publish. Okay, now it's loading the data. Now I'm hoping to see the Japan row that we created in the country table on SQL Server. And there we go. Good. Okay, so let's take it a stage further. Let's go switch back to Microsoft Code and go from step 6. So we're going to create another record for Argentina. Let's run that. That's done. Let's switch back to Fabric. Do a refresh. And there's Argentina flowed into Fabric. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to play around with the schema. The first thing is we're going to add a column called continent to the country table. So let's do that. Next thing we're going to do is create a new change tracking table for the country table. So bear in mind that with CDC and SQL Server, you can have 2 active capture instance tables. So you can flip between them, not flip between them, but you can sort of supersede one with the other, as it were. So let's do that. So my version 2 of capture instance for country table is now created. Okay, so the next thing to do is to try and populate the new column that we've put onto the country table. So for the Japan record, we're going to update the record so the continent is Asia. So let's do that. Okay, let's switch to Fabric again and see the effect of that. So let's refresh our results. And there we go. We've got the change record there. We've got CH on it. We see nothing in the continent for Argentina, so it's blank. I should also point out that when we see these results in Fabric, we see the Debezium Unix epoch date, which is the number of seconds or microseconds, whatever it is, since 1970. So you can work out the time of the data change from that. So there's an algorithm that you can use to work that out. Yeah, so that's worked. So let's go back to our SQL Server notebook and go for step 10. So step 10, we are going to get rid of the first tracking table, version 1. So let's do that, because we're going to create a new one for our next schema change. Okay, so version 1 of tracking is gone. We're now going to add another column to the country table called Planet. So let's do that. Done. Step 12, let's create a new tracking table, which is going to be called V3, version 3. Okay. Step 13, let's populate the Planet column, the new Planet column on the country table for the Argentina record. Okay, that's done. So let's again switch to Fabric and see the effect of that. Do refresh. And there we go. There's our tracking, and we can see that we've got the Earth. We've got the Earth for the Planet column filled in for Argentina, and it's keeping track of the changes for us. So that's good. Okay, next thing then let's switch back to our notebook. So this time we're going to create a new tracking table for the country table. So to do that, we need to get rid of the oldest one in this case. So let's get rid of version 2. And this time we're going to drop the continent table from this from the country table. So let's do that. So you drop the continent column from the country table, I should say. Done. Okay, let's create a new tracking table, which will be version 4. Okay, that's done. So let's create a new row in the country table, Italy, Mars. So just to fill something in. So let's run that. So country Italy, planet Mars. Just let that run for a moment. Done. Okay, again we switch back to Fabric. We're going to do a refresh. We can see the EC record in there. I should say these probably aren't ordered properly, but it doesn't really matter for this. There's Mars. The continent column is still there because that's what it was. It just retains it. I'm guessing that if you were to drop a column and recreate it with a different type, that might cause it to fail. But you know, an unlikely scenario, but it could happen, I suppose. But nevertheless, in this example, it has done what we wanted to do. Okay, for the final bit of this demonstration, we're going to switch back to our notebook in Microsoft Code. Find that one. There we go. And the final thing we're going to do is a little bit different from what we've done before, but we are going to create a brand new table called employee DBO Tibble employee. There. Very simple. We're going to apply CDC to it with a tracking table, version 1. And then we're going to create a record for Fred Smith. So if we do that, so that run through. Okay, that's finished. So finally, switch back to Fabric, and let's just refresh. Okay, so what we see here are the tables. So fortunately, it's cut it off, but what we're looking at the moment is the country table. After the refresh, we see another entry there, which is for the, you can see the little prompt that comes up, it's table employee. So this is the new one that we've added. So we've done no changes, but it's picked it up. We do now change the Delta stream, I should say, or to Fabric, and it just picked it up, and there it is, and there's Fred Smith. So that's the end of the demo. What I would say, this is probably an extreme example, as streams are naturally never ending, but it does show another method for getting SQL Server data into Azure, into Parquet. Streams have to be left, under consideration, streams have to be left running, and so clock up expense. Based on that, mirroring is probably the best choice, but again, it depends on your particular need. Hope this was useful, and thank you very much for watching the video. Cheers, bye.